We had one more exercise about regional drivers, and if you're game, since we're well ahead of the game, so to speak, it would be helpful to us as long as we have this group of colleagues in the room, which we don't have every day, to just talk for a couple of minutes about what you think other regional drivers might be of future location, not just of seniors, but of others in the population, and regional drivers other than just the market centers. So we made an assumption in some of this modeling that we've been doing for the last few months, that because the market centers are a policy framework that's been developed in the Sustained Southern Maine project among all of its partners across the whole project area of York and Cumberland counties and Brunswick and Saginaw as a partner, key partner as well, that these 160 market centers that the consultant team, which Carol has been the coordinator of, identified. Evan Rickard was the key person in developing that on that team. Because we have this framework of market centers from which the 9 pilot centers were recruited, we thought, well, what if we make this assumption about the future that they could attract more growth for whatever reason? They're on YouTube, there's incentives, the zoning gets changed, the transportation access is better in terms of non-auto or other transportation access opportunity, whatever. We just made that assumption. And you saw some early results of that. But what might other regional drivers be? Besides attraction and market centers.
Recreational.
Is that approximate?
Yeah.
And how approximate do you think, Chris? Chris has been working on the open space data set for this whole region. Another, kind of long project to develop.
I can't recall what some of the things we looked at. Like a mile or two of, I'm not sure what the...
Any other opinions about that, by the way?
Accessible public transport, or just as a second line?
Wide variety of housing options.
Is the question one of the drivers, Jay?
Right.
Yeah,
Are you asking what's going to make the centers grow and be attractive to people? Is that really the...
Well, other drivers as well, not just the ones in the centers.
No, I think that's the question, at least for me, in sort of developing a model is, well, what other assumptions, with the data we've got, can we use as suitability factors that will pull or repel?
Maybe climate change modeling, low-lying areas, coastal areas that may be impacted, turn some coastal areas open space. Maybe less so in Maine, but certainly where I go up in Long Island in New Jersey, that would be more prevalent.
Well, the work that Sam Merrill, who now has had to leave Muskie, but has this consulting firm, Catalysis Adaptation Partners, that work on sea level rise all along the coast of Maine and in other states as well, shows that it's not just going to be Sandy hitting New Jersey and New York. It's going to be a lot of places. So that,
We have to stop thinking about climate change as just a coastal issue too, because the impacts are significant for communities. But I would add to the list infrastructure. Infrastructure.
lack of, or
Lack of it will keep us from, I think, getting the kind of growth we might like to see. If we put the right infrastructure in the places we want the growth, those are probably going to happen.
It's a constraining factor.
It's a constraining factor, yeah. I think it's actually arisen as the number one constraining obstacle to us getting to what we think would be the right thing for us.
right?
Whether it be wastewater, drinking water, broadband, it's a pretty big sweep of stuff that falls in the infrastructure category.
Are we still talking about the aging population, or are we?
We're talking in general.
I mean, I think one of the things that's an intangible, I mean, you just can't put it up there, but it's an important issue is, you know, where is the demand going to be? Where is the developer going to develop? Because that's where people are going to go.
But he's gonna develop it where he can sell houses.
Right, so I think the infrastructure piece.
But I mean, if you can put septic systems in a 20,000 square foot lots, that's anywhere, and, you know, it's difficult because.
I mean, I hate to say this, but considering we do have a big baby boom bubble, it's going to be, as we all noted, moving massively. Healthcare services, hospitals are a big deal for these folks.
Yeah, I was gonna say the aging population itself,
They don't want to get too far for when the big ones come, you know, so.
Right.
Well, now that we're hitting specific age groups, I mean, you know, there are 4 or 5 move points outside of moving for a job in the typical life. For people like me, it's, you know, wanting to be near a hospital in a walkable neighborhood, all that kind of stuff. For people with kids who are going to go to school, it is the school's rating. More and more families are becoming very aware of school rating, not necessarily school quality, but school rated quality.
Our governor's interested in this too. And I mean, that's a traditional factor, you know, for urban and regional
For
planning.
one state.
Where is, you know, where the
Yes.
schools.
But you get highly differential, I mean, there's no such thing as a public school in the United States. You either pay for your private school or you pay more for the house and more per year in taxes for your good public private school. And then a lot of people, when the kids reach the 13th grade, they move out of town. So it's move in, move out for school rates.
So actually, a regional driver is the change in the school age household population.
Right.
That's a pretty good list. That's a very expert, you know, little group in this room. I want to go back to Chris's item, because we've been thinking about open space, you know, as we have all struggled to develop a coverage of conservation and open space areas, which is very hard to define. But I was reading some British research over the last year that I've actually referred to in some other sessions we've done, like the open house that we did at the Mill, which showed that as a region urbanizes, recreation opportunities within 5 miles or even 10 miles become higher in value. They did some survey work. Charlie's, of course, made this argument in the Changing Maine publications for some years. So instead of worrying about going to Acadia from here, they're worried about going to Twin Brook and Cumberland or you know, Bradbury Mountain or whatever there is. And I think that, you know, I haven't been able to find a comparable piece of work except for Charlie's published arguments about that in the States, but I'm still looking. So I think, you know, 1 to 2 miles, but maybe even further out. I think it's a factor.
Can you share that, by the way? I mean, like, I listened to somebody this morning make the argument that we shouldn't really be terribly focused on conserving open space in southern Maine because northern Maine has so much of it.
So,
Yeah.
well,
Let them eat Aroostook County.
Portland's playground.
I'll try and dig it up. I had to drill into the article and read it a couple of times to find it, because instead of like, you know, it's by a British academic instead of a, you know, practitioner who would headline that and say, ooh. But I'll try and dig it out. So it's a terrific list. Jeremy?
Well, following up on Rebecca's question about sharing, do you share these modeling forecasts with like state agencies, local governments, utility districts, things like that, in terms of projecting for future
We've
growth?
just been doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will it eventually get shared, or how does that,
Yes,
does that work?
we came in a little later, so I'm here to plug about this. We are planning on putting all of these data sets up on the data commons that has been developed by the NSF Sustainability Solutions Initiative project side of the house. And so we're going to have a legacy commons where we put all this. We started out the commons, this is worth taking a minute to mention, we started out the Commons with several research assistants just downloading stuff from the Maine Geolibrary and individual towns, and it's totally useless as far as combining them. So, lo, these many months later, we're building these composite data sets, and the question is going to be, can we maintain them and build them out? So, for example, if you I'm sure Anna would forgive me for saying this, but Anna was in a meeting with me where I showed a draft of the generalized zoning map 6 or 8 weeks ago, and said, well, Brunswick's not it. I said, well, we don't have Brunswick. And she said, well, we got to do it. And so she said, call Jeremy. That's how I found out Jeremy was back in the state, actually. One of the grads said, okay. So eventually we got a data set from Jeremy, but then it was maybe not the right one first, so we got a second one, we adjusted it. We still can't classify the Naval Air Station because that takes a little more thought among us all. But, so we got Brunswick in there, and the question is going to be, the point of this, when we put all this up, can we continue to use it and maintain it? It does cost something to do it. So, we'll have a report about it and some of the forecasting information illustrating, much like we have done today, a quick way, what there might be to learn from this. And then we'll have to see where we collectively, through the partnership mechanism that's now been created, might go with this in terms of continuing to develop it. Because, we got people pushing back, and we're doing this months or a couple of years ago saying, why don't you just download stuff from the Geolibrary? But I mean, that's not going to really do it. So that's an answer to your question, would be the state commons as part of the partnership and SSI project with this information on it. We don't have it yet. Everything takes more time. Anticipate. So, yes.
I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't want
You can interrupt.
But I guess a follow-up question to that, I'm sorry I missed the first part of what you were talking about. Wells was the center of opportunity as part of the analysis, and Kittery was as well. Are you planning on trying to get the general zoning information for that part of the state?
Well, Jerry Milroy asked me about this as well, planning director of Kittery, for those of you who don't know him, several months ago, even just before Anna did. And I said, well, we'll have to just find the time to do it. So that's the issue, if SMPCD is a PCC. If they just, if you all...
SMRPC.
If you all collectively decide, let's start adding, key towns, then we can try to plan, what we're going to do with that and fill it in. I mean, honestly, my own opinion, I'm just, this is the last of these sessions, so basically my job has been to get a panel together and to serve their needs and make it easy and write up the script for them, make sure it gets recorded with the help of Carol's team, Scott, and others and so on. But now, I just want to give my own opinion. I'm an old, because we're doing it today. It's nothing bad. I'm an old Oregon planner. I was trained in Oregon almost 40 years ago, this coming year, with the land use program and urban growth boundaries and regional planning and, the Portland, other Portland metropolitan growth framework, which is this massive, I think the current one is the 2040 vision that we've all seen, but it makes a difference because, it's like in the food session we did here, which is like a year or more ago, local food systems, and we had a couple of farmers sitting right here, and one of them, I forget whether it was a man or a woman, but one of them said, this is really good information about how we're really growing a significant food system and something part of it. And we ought to have a map of it, like Portland Trails has this map of revision of trails for Portland. We need one for food. And actually that's happening bit by bit. So it has power. And I think my own belief, for whatever it's worth or not, is that in order to have good deliberation about a metropolitan scale, you gotta have some way to grasp it, visually. Say, hey, what's going on? Where are things? to fuel it, so people can argue about it, and try and figure out what does it mean, and so on. And it's a hike, because not everybody thinks that way, and you've got to get the information. But I hope that is part of the legacy of this 3 years, wonderful 3 years we've had with the Sustained Southern Maine.
It's not over.
It's not over. No, it's not over. It ain't over. But this phase is kind of first grade, or was it preschool?
I don't know, I got a diploma when I went to DC, so.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had a graduation ceremony for all the FY10 grantees.
Oh,
It was very sweet.
that is sweet. So, that we keep talking about through the network that we have, developed over those 3 years. That's going to be the key number one thing is, does that network continue? By the way, this housing mix stuff, Donna left the room just as I wanted to say something. We had a housing session as well, which Donna was a panelist for. And I just, want to highlight again how much we learned about, how towns can innovate from Freeport, which has really been hammering away at, how can we just get a diversity in housing? Because they got all those people working there, and, it's kind of a key center, and not that other communities aren't doing it. Brunswick has these terrific opportunities with Mira, redevelopment of an air station and so on. But, it's just, the reason for doing these sessions, which we included in the original project, plan, design, was to share this stuff and get talking about it, be able to move the blinders out from the daily grind that we have to do and think about this stuff. Food, housing, the demographic changes happening. Charlie led a small army of graduate assistants, all of whom have graduated, right? Have you graduated?
No.
Get on the stick. Because it's sort of like age report. And so we had a session about that. Reports available, by the way. Jeremy, I don't know if Anna ever brought one back to your office, but you probably want to be sure you have one at Brunswick.
If not, I have.
Yep, and it's online.
I haven't read it yet if we haven't, so I'll have
Okay,
to put that
well,
on my list.
you just got back today, so feeling great. So other comments? This is a great discussion. It's wonderful to have this kind of as a cap off on these knowledge sharing sessions. A summary of the session, a little different kind of session, but a summary will be posted on the what we've learned section of the Sustained Southern Maine website in a couple of weeks or so.
That stuff may start to get moved as we actually build the site out further.
Right.
So sure, this particular session.
So there'll have to be some communication about that migration, as always there is with that kind of stuff.
So what we've learned is like everything on it is sort of in one place right now, and as you're about to upload a bajillion documents to it, we're thinking that maybe
The knowledge sharing will probably stay in a similar place based on our discussion, but the other stuff will get their own
it's
tabs.
tough. You might want to. Well, we'll have to think about it. Sort of, like we have the transit knowledge sharing session that might get moved to the transportation page. I'm not sure. I'm really good at it. It's not thought.
That was another great session. This is like reliving memories now, because Brian Hill, has Brian graduated?
Yes, Brian's
Yeah,
not playing
Brian,
our
so Brian did a capstone with some partners. We asked him to do it, cooperated, where he looked at how to improve Metro. And the key finding was if you just would build more bus shelters, that would in itself be a terrific boost. And I just, finding like that, it's doable, it's elegant, it's real, it's a terrific little piece of work. That was a great session. That's summarized on the site. So let's thank Eric and Sandy and Emily for the terrific work on this.